Well, what a final day that was, wasn't it? The day after the day before, I guess, and everything is now calmed down, or so to speak. But Aston Villa clearly aren't happy about their situation, of course, missing out by a whisker to Newcastle United for a place in next year's Champions League. They have made an official complaint to the Pgmol, so we'll have a look at that. Eddie Howe has also issued a transfer warning to Newcastle United fans ahead of the window opening. Pep Guardiola has opened up about Jack Grealish and what the situation with him is, and has Alexander Isak finally given an indication that he is staying at Newcastle United? Let's take a look. Hi everybody and welcome back to the Toon Review YouTube channel. My name's Paul. Thank you so much once again for tuning in to the latest news. And yes, Aston Villa have decided to complain to the Pgmol regarding their game against Manchester United yesterday, in which Morgan Rogers scored what looked like a very good goal, and the referee blew his whistle for a foul on the goalkeeper as Morgan Rogers rolled the ball into the back of the net. Now, because the referee blew his whistle, VAR could then not intervene and have another look at it and say, no, there wasn't a foul there. Because the player was stopped and didn't carry on, VAR then could not look at this situation. Now, Aston Villa are furious about this. They've made an official complaint regarding the referee, saying that they believe that a more experienced referee should have been in charge of the game because of the magnitude of it. Now, look, Aston Villa... Granted, I wish they did get in the Champions League, okay? I'll openly admit that. I'd rather Aston Villa got there than one of the cartels such as Chelsea. I've made that plain and clear. A lot of Newcastle United fans probably would have liked to have seen Villa alongside us get into the Champions League. It wasn't to be. But Villa fans have short memories. Of course, they had an incident a few years ago which saw them escape relegation because Bournemouth went down because of a goal line technology error that would have seen Aston Villa relegated to the Championship. It didn't happen. They survived. Now, for me, you know, things like this are swings and roundabouts. I know it doesn't rub well with Aston Villa fans. I can understand that. They're probably hurting today, knowing that they could have been in the Champions League. We did not perform yesterday, but managed to scrape in there. But it's over a season, guys. Let's not forget that. It's over a season. If you're in the top 5, you deserve to be there at the end of the season. It's over 38 games. But again, that probably won't wash with Aston Villa fans. But look, we've had to take a lot of crap in the past. We've had to take some dreadful decisions. We've had to take relegations on board. We've had to do a lot of things as Newcastle United fans. But I think over the course of the season, we damn well deserve to be in the Champions League. Not on yesterday's performance, of course, but I'm not going to sit here and say we don't deserve Champions League because we played a bad game against Everton. It's a course across the season. But some Villa fans have been very polite and said well done to Newcastle for making the Champions League. Other Villa fans have really reacted on social media like spoiled kids and having to go at Newcastle United when it's not really our fault. It's what happened at Old Trafford. You can't blame Newcastle. You know, if you're going to throw the blame at anyone, like you have, you complain to the Pgmol, which is exactly what you've done. But that's not going to change anything. That's not going to change the outcome of the fact that you are not in the Champions League next season. I understand you're putting a complaint in, but at the same time, what do you expect to get from it? That's the question I'm asking this morning. You know, you'll get an apology probably, but is that going to really do any good to anybody at Aston Villa? No, it's not. It doesn't change anything. And certainly they're not going to turn around and say, yes, it was a blatant mistake, which we all know it was. It's a blatant mistake for everybody to see, but they're not going to turn around and say, right, well, because of that mistake, we'll put Aston Villa in the Champions League and Newcastle in the Europa. That's not going to happen. So, you know, at the same time, it is swings and roundabouts. I'm sorry to say it, but you got away with one a few years ago when you sent Bournemouth down, and it should have been yourselves. You know, but Bournemouth had to fight the way back. You go into the Europa, I expect you to do very well in the Europa. Go ahead and win it. Go ahead and win the Europa League and get back in the Champions League that way. You've got a really good opportunity. For us, look, we got away with one yesterday. There's no doubt about it. At one stage, we were out. We were in sixth place. And, I don't care what happened yesterday. We weren't going to score. We just could not score yesterday for love nor money. So we got away with one. But it's over the course of a season. And I think some Aston Villa fans are forgetting that. Not all of them, but some. Some are very angry about the decision yesterday. And I can understand that. But to turn on Newcastle and be sour about us qualifying, that had nothing to do with us. It was what happened at Old Trafford. It was a terrible, terrible error by the referee. However, these things happen. And we all have to move on. I don't know what Aston Villa expect to get from the complaint apart from an apology saying, yeah, you're right, the referee made a mistake. End of story. There's nothing anyone can do about it now because it's all water under the bridge because it happened yesterday. It's gone. Newcastle finished 5th. Villa finished 6th. Villa go into the Europa League, Newcastle Champions League. That is not going to change at all. So I don't know where they expect to get with the complaint. But look, we all know the officiating in the Premier League is rank. It is shockingly bad. And the way that VAR is run is also disgraceful. We've seen many, many decisions this season which are mind-boggling. And the fact that they've had to come out and apologise nearly every single match week gives you an indication of how bad VAR and the officiating is. It's bollocks, right? Everybody will admit that. And some things have to be done. They're going to have to really look at this summer and think, right, how can we make this better? Because there is numpties running the Pgmol, there's numpties running VAR, and they need to change it. Because, like I say, it is affecting results on the pitch. It is affecting the season after for these clubs. Villa miss out on millions by not getting into the Champions League through a stupid error from the referee. We're fortunate. We played terrible yesterday, but, over the course of the season, we were good enough to finish 5th. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry for Villa, but like I say, I'd rather Villa were in the Champions League with us more than Chelsea because of the cartel stuff. I'd much rather, the likes of us and Forest and Villa, who were putting pressure on all season, actually made the Champions League. I've got no gripe with Villa. I know people trying to say a few years ago when we got relegated, sub on the time and all that bollocks. Look, I don't care about that. What I care about is the future of football and the cartel trying to take control. I'd much rather have Villa in that Champions League, and I think a lot of Newcastle fans would have. But we can't dwell on that. We got 5th. We're in the Champions League. Now, Eddie Howe. A couple of weeks ago in his press conference, he did speak very positively about the transfer window, didn't he? Saying that, we were going to do this, we were going to do that. It's important that, we haven't signed anybody for 3 transfer windows and now is the time to do something about it. And mentioned that we were going to go in early and try and bring in these players, especially if we made the Champions League. Now, we have made the Champions League, and Eddie met with the chairman last night, straight away after the game, to discuss the transfer window. But after the game, Eddie, he was very coy about the transfer window. Now, he's done this many, many times about the transfer window, and now he's sort of taking a backward step and trying to warn the fans that maybe the money that the fans think is there isn't quite there. Now, this could be for 2 reasons, guys. Eddie can be just playing everything down and not letting the supporters get too carried away. Or he's also saying this, so when we do start negotiations with certain teams, they don't think they can't push us too far. We're not going to get pushed around thinking we've got millions to spend. And he's putting a warning out saying, look, if we come in with an offer, you're best off take it because we don't have the funds to go any higher. So it might be a clever ploy by Eddie Howe with this. But what he said was, he says, if you're talking about someone at the very top who is already established, then I think the wages and the financial package become very difficult for us. That's me speaking honestly, as much as we might want it. He says, of course, it's much easier for me to bring in a ready-made, established, world-class player, but I don't think we've done that since I've been here because we haven't been able to financially. We're not in the position of some of the other clubs. We have to bring them in and try to make them into that. I don't envisage that changing because of the PSR restraints on us. Now, that's going to annoy a lot of Newcastle United fans hearing those 3 letters PSR again after signing nobody for 3 transfer windows. It pisses me off. But I think, we have to be sort of realistic and realise what Eddie Howe is actually saying here. Because I genuinely think that he's just playing things down because of teams maybe putting ridiculous prices on the heads of some of their star players. I still genuinely believe we are going to go out there in the summer window and bring in an elite player. At least one. I think the squad needs a few additions, and I think we'll go and get the few additions. But they're not all going to be elite world-class players. We know that. That doesn't work. We'll probably bring in one or two, and the rest that come in the door will be of quality. And some people that Eddie Howe can work with and improve, like he says there, to make even better, like he has done with a few of the signings that have come to Newcastle in the past couple of seasons with him. So I'm not panicking here. I'm not going to turn around and say, we're signing nobody, because that'll be a load of crap. I think Eddie's playing the situation down. I would love to have been a fly on the wall in that meeting between him and the chairman last night. Obviously, he's probably reassuring Eddie that there's going to be funds available and we can go and get some of the targets. Now, for me, I think Billy was right with what he said on one of the live shows, that Newcastle United would probably have a set of player targets if we qualified for the Champions League and a set of player targets if we failed to qualify for the Champions League. Now we're in there. I think they'll turn their attention to that list and then go and make the signings as needed. Look, negotiations for the players aren't going to be very easy. These, if we go in for really good players, they will expect a decent wage. And, our financial situation in the past has been meant we've put a wage structure in place. At one stage, we're going to have to smash the wage structure. It's going to have to be broken if we want to bring in the elite players. We can't keep saying, we can't give you this kind of wage, we can't give you that wage. We've got to go for it at some point. And I think that's going to happen this summer. But I'm not really worried about Eddie's comments there, because I think we know what Eddie's like. He's very, very good at this, don't forget, about playing things down and not panicking and just giving supporters, I'm not saying he doesn't give supporters hope. Of course he does. But he doesn't want supporters to get carried away. But I think the main message is that Newcastle United are not going to be pushed around in the transfer window like Palace tried to do with Gahey last summer. Newcastle will go in with offers, but he's firing out a warning that because of PSR restraints, we still can't go and keep going in with higher and higher offers. It's just not going to happen with Newcastle United. So you very much take it or leave it. But I expect us to be busy, guys. I think we all do. But it's not going to be 5 players coming in who are absolute elite players. That's not going to happen. We know that. But it will happen where we get a couple of elite players. I genuinely believe that, because we're in a better financial situation than we have been, certainly, because of not signing anybody. But also the Champions League money that we'll get as well. That'll be a massive bonus. So all is not lost on transfers, and I think we're going to be busy, and I think we get them in early. Obviously, with it opening on the 1st of June, I genuinely think we'll go in very, very early and get players in the door. Pep Guardiola has spoken about Jack Grealish. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Grealish leaving Manchester City in the summer. And, of course, Newcastle United have been heavily linked to him with a loan deal. Now, his wages are around $300,000 a week, which means that Newcastle United will probably turn around to Manchester City and say, look, if we're taking Grealish, you need to pay some of his wages, because we're not prepared to pay $300,000 a week for a loan signing. That is not going to happen. Now, he's been in and out the side this season. He hasn't had a great season, Jack Grealish, but it's clear that Pep Guardiola is still a massive, massive fan of the player. Of course, look, he went on to talk about his selection, and he said it was selection basis. That is it. The last 2 months, month and a half, there were 5 or 6 players at home every time. And this time I decided for these guys, no more than that. Of course, Jack has to play. He's an unbelievable player that has to play football every 3 days. It didn't happen this season and last season either. He needs to do it with us or another place. It's a question for Jack, his agent, and the club. Now, for me, that is the biggest indication that Manchester City will probably look to offload Jack Grealish in the summer. It's not a statement of saying, yes, he's going, but when you hear Pep Guardiola say, with us or another place, that gives you an indication that they're willing certainly to listen to any offers, which will probably be loan deals, because Man City paid 100 million quid for him. They're going to want a chunk of money back, without a shadow of a doubt, but they're going to get nowhere near that, because Grealish hasn't been at it for a season and a half. But when you've got Pep Guardiola bigging him up, saying he's an unbelievable player, you listen to Pep Guardiola. And like I say, we discussed this on the show last week. If Grealish came in on a loan deal, I think Newcastle have nothing to lose on that because it's a loan. And if he really performs, then we get the benefit of that. So I'm not saying don't sign Jack Grealish on a loan deal. A loan deal would be fine for me, not a permanent one, but a loan definitely. But Pep went on to say if he stays, it will be fine. And he fought like he fought from day one to make a contribution, but not today. For example, the FA Cup final I rotated, and Rico and Maka were not there, and Kusanov and Vitor and Everechi played. So it's the same. I tried to move the players like it was there, and today it was Jack, no more than that. So again, he's talking about, in a really complicated way, the fact that he left Jack Grealish out just for, straightforward reasons. So it wasn't anything to look into it. He's just turning around saying, I left Jack out. It wasn't for any arguments or lack of form. He had plenty of players to choose from. But it's a real strong indication that I think Grealish may be on his way. And Newcastle certainly are one of the clubs interested in a loan deal. And finally, Alexander Isak. Has he given the biggest indication yet that he's going to be staying at Newcastle United? Now, he put on his Instagram post a little quote, which has really sort of... It's caused a lot of Newcastle United fans to read into it and say, yes, he's definitely staying, because he put a photo on his Instagram and then with the caption saying, Champions League secured, what a season it's been, grateful for the immense support throughout the year, how are the lads? Now, there's nothing in that quote saying, can't wait to see you next season, really looking forward to it. But it's the fact that he's got Champions League secured with an exclamation mark, and I think he's looking forward to playing in the Champions League. And a lot of Newcastle fans have taken that as, see you next season, Isak. Now, Isak hasn't been at it for the last 4 or 5 games. He hasn't looked himself. We know why. He's been injured. He's had a remarkable season. Absolutely remarkable. We know the talent that Isak has. He's a worldie, without a shadow of a doubt. That's why the big clubs want him. But the fact is, he wanted Champions League. We've got Champions League. And like we've said all along, it's so important for these players to get Champions League to stay at the club. If we didn't make the Champions League yesterday, I had a real bad feeling that we would lose 2 or 3, at least, who want to play in the elite competition. And it would be very hard for Newcastle United to turn down the big offers because we weren't getting the Champions League money in the door. But it changes now we're in the Champions League. Completely changes. The whole scope of things change with players now wanting to stay because they're in the Europe's elite competition. The money's there. The chance to win things is there. And that's what the attraction will be to bring in new players as well. So it's huge on every front. But, I mean, look, I believe Isak is staying. I believe that from the start. I don't see any reason why Alexander Isak would want to leave the club now. He loves it in Newcastle. We have a really, really good manager. We've got a fantastic morale in the dressing room. It's a great place to play football right now. And I don't see any need for Isak to move now. But again, I mean, you can never say never. Eddie said that last week. You can never say never. But for me, I think he stays. But let me know what you think of all the latest news. What do you think of Villa complaining to the Pgmol? Do they have a right to do that, even though there's nothing really can be done about it? And Eddie, is he right to issue that warning about the transfer window? Has he done the right thing? Do you think he's done it for that reason, just to put other clubs off thinking we've got millions and millions to spend? Let me know in the comments. But thank you very much for watching, guys. If you have enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button. And of course, if you're new, please do subscribe. Free of charge. But don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload or a live show from the channel. And don't forget to check the website out, thetoonreview.com, for all the merchandise. It is right on there. Get yourself something nice to support the channel. But we'll see you very soon, guys. Take care.